I can see you. We can see you, Billy, but microphone can't hear you. Yeah, I know. I don't know. This happens sometimes. We'll get this sorted out. Last time someone's having permissions, like I say.
All right.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
yeah, there you are. Perfect.
Okay, sweet. Okay.
Awesome.
Uh, fifth time is charm.
Hang on one second.
All right.
Let me.
Technology. That's what we're here about, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's all reminders that you can't be trusted. Things are gonna go wrong, and you just gotta roll with the punches.
Yeah.
All right, hang on. Let
Yeah.
me double check real quick and make sure streaming's up on these things.
For your information too, the forgot password thing doesn't work on this. So I tried to use another browser
Oh no.
and I have the password, and so it never sent an email. So
Okay.
I
I'll bug it, Circle SO because that's what we're using and try to get that sorted out. But I appreciate
no,
that
so,
heads up. Okay. All right, we're live on the LinkedIn. All the other ones are live. We got some cool people in here already. So Billy, please introduce yourself.
whew, yeah. Hey Gary. So I'm Billy Zajac. Currently the CTO and co-founder of Commune, which is a social media startup that is on the verge of launching. We're like right almost there. Also CEO of a technology consulting company called Tensor Group. That one pays the bills right now. Um, my history, geek, sort of started my career as a Unix systems admin at the New York Stock Exchange, been at startups from back when they were called .coms. mp3.com was my first one. Was a long-term employee of Disney. I was there for almost 10 years where I worked in innovation and blue sky rapid prototyping, as well as operations, built a proxy for all the APIs and wrangled all the APIs. And the proxy handled over 2.5 trillion requests while I was there in the few years. And I measurably showed that it never added more than a millisecond and a half of latency to any request, and it handled stuff like authentication, authorization, its cores, consistency, reverse geo IP lookup, and things like that. So that was a fun thing. Was the director of emerging technologies at Warner Bros. uh, I don't know. I've been CTO and VP of engineering and stuff at various other startups since. So yeah, I've got a checkered past, you might say.
I love it. I think it's great. And one of the best things about mentors like you is how many different roles you've had and experiences that you can pull from. And also, a lot of different industries and different markets. I think something that's important for a lot of people that are starting out is understanding how different experiences and skills are transferable to different areas. And it's more about understanding methodologies and properly contextualizing things to know how to apply those methodologies in any given situation. So we'll touch on that a little bit. But for those that are joining us on LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, please use the text chat, post your questions, share what you're working on, and we can get some answers, some feedback, insight, and guidance from Billy, depending on what you're trying to do. Working on a business, co-found, being a CTO role too, tech role, or just trying to learn so you can be potentially a better client, save money, whatever it is. So yeah, I appreciate you being here, Billy, and being able to speak to so many different areas. While we wait for some questions to come rolling in, I'm curious, with so much of a corporate background, and now you're working on your own startup, in addition to consulting as well, paying the bills. But for the startup specifically, I'm wondering, because it's something that is often talked about from startup founders, how anti-corporate they are, and anything that is reminiscent of corporate structure, they try to say is evil and bad. So documentation, for example, SOPs, like these types of things. I'm curious, in your experience with this new startup that you're working on, that you're CTO with, what are you applying that would be considered corporate to how you're operating the business and growing the business. So what is really giving you and the team a better foundation to move faster and run these iterative cycles more efficiently?
So I want to back up on the question a little bit. So it was a great question, and thank you. I want to back up and maybe reframe it a little bit, because I'm not sure that I even necessarily agree with the premise, or even the phrase corporate. I get that there can be this overarching way to bucket things as being corporate. So when I was at the New York Stock Exchange, that was probably the most rigid and structured environment I've ever been in. We had only certain times of the day that we could touch the boxes, because this is before virtualization, so they were boxes. Um, when we did touch boxes, we had to plan it in advance. We had to we had to write up an official document that said what we wanted to do to even just log into a box. It wasn't SSH back then; it was just RSH. So we would RSH into these boxes and just see stuff, much less touch or update anything. And that then had to go in front of the war committee, which met every day, which was all the VPs. And the war stood for work action request, which the system we used was called action request. And so we'd go in front of the war. I don't know if they tried to make the acronym fit or it just happened to work out that way. And so it was extraordinarily rigid and structured. And at the same time, it was very flexible. If you did need to change something and you did need to whatever, you could throw up a request at the last minute right before the war meeting and say, hey, I've got this thing, I really need to look at it. And you could talk in front of humans. And it was more a committee based on kind of wisdom than law, right? They weren't, nothing was a hard and fast rule, and you could break them if you could get the right people involved. But you did need to get the right people involved for visibility, because if you're touching something, who knows what else someone might be doing on that machine. And so right after the New York Stock Exchange, I went to mp3.com, and it was a fast and loose startup, and people were stepping on each other's toes. And I came in as the configuration management person. That was my thing, was effectively, how do we get developers to work together with the systems people in ways that we can maintain sanity. And so we didn't have the term DevOps back then, but that probably would have been called this. And so what I found was, and what I brought was not just rules and regulation, which could be viewed as corporate. I thought, okay, what are the problems? How are we stepping on each other's toes, and why? And what can we do to prevent this? And putting in some simple policies and procedures in place absolutely would help. However, we needed to be able to move fast. So the trick was then, what kind of tools were available that would allow us to follow policy and procedure and still not slow us down? And being a geek and an optimist, I thought, well, what if I make tools or find tools or both that allow us to follow policy and procedure, and in fact, make it easier to follow policy and procedure than to not? So back then we used CVS. That is way before Subversion, which is before Git. And CVS had this really annoying thing where you had to set a bunch of variables in your command line about what your user and was, and people weren't used to doing that. So I wrote a simple shell script that just wrapped it. And in that thing immediately changed our usage of CVS. People went from thinking, oh, this is such a pain in the ass. I can just name my files .1 and .2 and .3 and .this date and .Billy Z's version of whatever, checking what, and which was how people handled version control back then frequently. And it changed it to make it easier to just, hey, throw it in the server, throw up a commit. You put an actual message on it. Other people can see. You won't clobber each other. You won't clobber yourself. of history. And so the simple tool with the policy and procedure made it easier. And so I feel like what can be missed in corporations frequently is the fact that these policies and procedures, I think you need to question, why do they exist? Why do we have them? Do they still make sense? Because especially in a startup, things are changing rapidly. In a big corporation, things may be moving more slowly, but still not so slowly that you should frequently reevaluate your policies and procedures, and then look at the tooling and find out, does your tooling help to enable following this? Is this toolable? Which the answer is always yes. Um, and uh, and yeah, so as far as what kind of corporate things, documentation is amazing. Like, you can't live without documentation. You need to know how stuff works. Um, we live in a really neat time with these LLMs, where LLMs can create documentation for you. They can create JS docs, assuming most developers here and most modern day developers are working in JavaScript. You can tell the LLM, hey, look through my code and just punch a bunch of JS docs in there. And all of a sudden, now all your functions have this beautiful little thing on top of it. Testing. Testing used to seem like this brutal thing. And again, LLMs can help you with that. And so that is the tooling that helps us to do that. Documentation is some external thing. It's debatable that ever had value, because who would read it? I assume that came into place in various places because people thought, well, hey, no one knows what we're doing. We're doing inconsistent stuff. Let's have people write this documentation. And they didn't realistically go and reassess, hey, who's actually reading it? Is this actually helping people? So um, and I know I've covered a bunch of stuff. I feel like my answer was kind of messy, but I'll put one more bit of stuff into that soup, which is actually, I'm not. It's already messy enough. I'll just leave it at that. Was that somewhat coherent?
No, yeah, it was gonna hurt. I think some of the things that stand out that are important to be aware of in a position of leadership, right? When, especially if you're the startup founder or co-founders working together, right? It's about contextualizing things, like you said, like asking first, what's the goal that we're trying to achieve here? What's the intent of these different things that we want to use, tools, and how can we use them to accomplish that goal? Is essentially what you're laying out. And any tool is a tool. It doesn't matter if corporations are using it or not. It doesn't mean that it is antithetical to being a startup that is loose and fast, as most people try to make them out to be. Like, that's the goal. It's about trying to enhance your ability to openly communicate with yourselves and your team, set clear expectations of what the roles are and the tasks at hand, but then also having a way to easily and effectively, again, communicate and bring about, hey, is this the best thing? Can we try this? Is this something better? And in speaking from the more career development angle, as you're sharing your story, you're also highlighting the importance of these relationships and understanding who to speak to in order to accomplish whatever the goal is that you want to do, whether it's creating a new API or a new system to manage these things, whatever it is. So yeah, it was verbose, but I think it was good, and you did a good job at least like connecting it to real examples of your actual experience and what was going on. So I think it was good. And it was awesome too, because we ended up getting a question over from LinkedIn with Sassy asking, hey, Gary and Billy, I'm working on an AI powered finance startup for individuals in wealth management. I'm looking for an expert in AI, full stack, preferably experienced in finance services platforms. Could you give me any tips, suggestions on how to find one? So, this would be interesting, Billy, speaking, from the consulting side, but also as a potential co-founder that, I'm sure you got to know a lot of people in your life up to this point asking you, hey, can you build this with me? So I'd love to hear, your advice.
Yeah, well, first, that sounds like a really fun project. You know, uh, Everything is AI and has to do with AI these days. I think that's probably unavoidable. Um, so where I'd probably go is with hiring. So in my experience with hiring, I think the important thing to do is keep in mind what what experience do you need coming in? What's the hard experience, I'll say? What is easily learned, and sometimes it's just comparative. What is more easily learned? Do you feel that the domain? So I'm not sure what you're doing in finance, but is the domain the hard part, or is the tech the hard part, or is it really where the intersection of those two are? If you are struggling to find a person in one, um, or for a person who has both, um, perhaps you want to hire one of each with some people who are good communicators who you feel like can get along and potentially merge the two. And if you really do need deep experience in both, that's maybe your only option. Um, in my experience, a lot of tech can be learned, um, and can be learned quickly. And I find that enthusiasm for learning and enthusiasm for tech is one of these immeasurably powerful things. Um, Obviously, you need to have somebody who has tech experience, right? Someone's not going to know how to scale stuff. They're going to stumble and fall down common pitfalls unless they have some certain amount of experience. But that experience can come, fairly quickly in a few years, maybe 3 to 5 years, and you could have somebody who's really solid if they've had some good experience in building complex or scalable systems. And so, yeah, I think the pitfall I've found in the past is people are looking to fill a square peg with a square hole, and you really, in my experience, opening that up to, okay, I don't really know what the hole is. I know that there are these couple of attributes that I do need, right? I know that this finance experience is something that somebody who hasn't spent at least 5 or 6 years in finance is never going to be able to learn reasonably, or they're going to fall into horrible pitfalls. Again, same with tech. But I'd be careful on assuming that that is so hard and rigid. Um, I don't know. Does that align with your experience, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation with my brother actually earlier today about this in some regard because he's working on an idea and he's been doing a lot of vibe coding to kind of like flesh out the idea and get like a prototype at least, possibly an MVP. But he's been learning and doing a lot to do the best he can and be able to kind of like also enhance what the AI is spitting out while he's like using AI tools to help him with some of these things. And one of the things that we're talking about is his lack of understanding with some of these areas, right? Where, like you're saying, the lack of experience can make you think that it's a square, right? And you just need a square peg to fill that square hole. But in reality, when with more experience and expertise, you're able to better evaluate what that hole looks like, and all of a sudden, right, you're seeing all these different small little areas of imperfections that a square wouldn't actually fit because of that, right? You need to
Yeah.
make adjustments. So yeah, it's going to be important to either be patient and lean into your passion to keep learning and going slow and steady in that way, especially if you don't have the resources for it, right? But then on the flip side, and this might be something to have a conversation about. What I was telling him in regards to possibly finding a co-founder to help out with certain areas, or to hire people like you were suggesting. The best thing you can do as a founder who has limitations is do your best to create those product blueprints to the best of your knowledge, right? Where you do the wireframes, every single screen, every UI state that you imagine on each of those screens, you lay it out, right? The entire wireframes in user flow sequences showing core uh, uh, user experiences that people have, getting into your product and accomplishing very specific goals. You know, how do they create their account? How to get onboarded? How do they add, like, a client or, an account or whatever it is to manage? All these different things. And it doesn't need to be pixel perfect. It shouldn't be. It just needs good enough to represent exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish and how you want to do it, and then connect that to your product specifications. And then the user story is explaining like who these people are and why they would be using this, and do your best to illustrate all these different systems and how they relate, and then take that to a potential person that you would hire, or a potential co-founder or potential mentors, advisors, right? And get some of that feedback and insight to flesh out what you don't know and get you moving closer to your goal. Whether that's, like you said, putting in the investment of time and enthusiasm to learn and do as much as you can, uh, you know, within your own capacity based on what you're learning until you hit like a roadblock, right? Or if you don't, you can overcome it, right? Or you shop those around and then you get accurate quotes and estimates for the amount of labor hours that it would take to build this, and you can also compare what those estimates and quotes are based on the different teams or people that you're trying to hire, and start to evaluate their methodology to achieve that goal, which I think is is a very important thing. And someone like Sassy, if you want, you can feel free to share what your background is, what your experience is, um, what kind of person you're looking to hire and why them. Or you said an expert in AI, full stack, but it touches on a couple different things, like the role that you're describing, Sassy, and Bailey, you can add clarity to this, but it sounds like yeah, a couple different roles wrapped into one, and you already kind of addressed maybe separating some of these out to multiple people, but yeah, it's just going to help you get a better understanding of what you're building, why you're building it, how it should function, to then start to bring these other people and vet them. And I'm curious too, Billy, when it comes to those product blueprints and getting more context and more details, how much more effective is that for you, either as a potential co-founder or a potential hire, either that's as your firm consultant or as an employee? How effective is that as a tool to help you understand if this is someone worth joining and if you're the right fit for this or not?
So I think on our last call, I probably made the analogy where I feel like finding a co-founder is very similar to dating, and I think there are huge overlaps. I think you need to find someone who you enjoy talking with and working with and solving through puzzles. I think the most fundamental and important things are you need to find somebody who communicates in a way that is compatible with you, in a similar communication style. And I think curiosity, we'll call them the two C's. We'll label that then. Um, so, yeah, I think if this person is curious, as you drive through curiosity, curiosity is what will get you those user stories. It will get you the wireframes. And I'm not even sure which order I think I prefer to have things. For me, wireframes feels like a heavy lift. That's just my thing. Versus, I think creating, talking through a story. I probably identify more as a poet than a painter, and so maybe that's why I prefer words. So give me the story. What are we solving? What is the key that is going to make this app or platform or whatever valuable? What's the unique value proposition? How can we get people there, and what is their experience going to be like? Which, again, maybe if you're more visually oriented or visually capable than me, you will start with wireframes. But yeah, for me, I start with words. And then yeah, the curiosity will drive that, and then the communication. um, to bring it back to the corporate stuff in the beginning, I'm not sure. I'm going to sort of play with this out loud, but I feel like probably with all companies and all groups of people. And when you've got a second person, but especially when you've got a corporation, you start dealing with power dynamics. And power dynamics among large groups and complex structures are things that I have traditionally fallen down on. I have shown again and again that I suck at climbing ladders in corporate structures. Um, I can show my value, I can all sorts of stuff, and I really just get emotionally stuck when I see someone in a position of power making what I believe are the wrong decisions. And that has ended a number of jobs for me, where I've been told to stay in my swim lane or whatever. And so yeah, but that exists even if it's just two people. If it's just two co-founders, you and this is why I say somebody who you enjoy working with and enjoy communicating with and enjoy puzzling, because there will be points where you will either be in a position of power or feel like you are, outpowered by this person who knows more about tech or about the domain or something. And, if you're not able to work your way through socially a situation where you feel like you are able to contribute and be heard and you don't feel like you're being bowled over and you don't feel like you're bowling them over, um, yeah, that's kind of, I have a feeling that would like make and break just about any team. I was going to say startup, but like any friendship or team. And so, um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the heart of all this, it's a relationship. It's just another relationship with a different set of boundaries and responsibilities with it. But yeah, at the end of the day, if there's conflict, the dynamics are not, like you're saying, like, in harmony, where when conflict arises, you're able to be okay working together to solve that and overcome it. uh, yeah, it's gonna end. It's gonna end really, violently in a lot of respects, with just people getting real frustrated and angry and upset with each other, and it's gonna kill the relationship because the conflict's too much to overcome with each other. So yeah, it's important to take that approach and be aware that a co-founder, especially, is a long-term relationship, a working relationship with this person, and it's going to be very difficult to separate too, because you're creating value with each other, assuming that you're moving in the right direction, right? IP or product revenue streams, whatever it is, it's value. And if you're in conflict, it's going to be very difficult to figure out a way to separate without getting real emotional and just stupid about things. So that's really important. Building on this, the we got into a couple different areas, building in regards to attracting the right person and communicating with the right person. But when it comes to actually finding someone, what are some ways that you've found co-founders or uh, new hires, or a person to bring on to the team, right? Like, a lot of people think that they have to make post on a co-founder platform or something. That's the only way. Others think that they gotta just you know reach out to someone they know and hope that they're gonna build because they know a technical person, right? So I'm curious, like, in your experience, what's your advice for getting introductions or putting yourself in position to maybe be vulnerable, but also make those connections and start to build those relationships?
Um, I think cast a wide net, practice.
Hang on, you just froze for a second. Hang on, Billy. Did I freeze? Boyne, I know you're always there. Can you hear me, Boyne? Or did I freeze? Did I? Find out in just a moment. Okay, I'm fine. All right, hang on. We'll get Billy back in just a second. All right. One moment. See? Tech events. tech issues. It's the one thing you can count on.
All right, are we back? Can
Yeah,
you hear
you're
me?
back. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Okay. Go
You're
figure. I think someone's doing some work on my internet or something.
yeah.
Your
It's
internet connection is unstable.
yeah.
I,
Yeah. I get that all the time. I think it's just typical Los Angeles crappy internet. But thankfully you cut out immediately when you first started talking. So pick it up right from the beginning.
um, yeah, cast a wide net. Practice. I think refining your pitch is important, about what you're looking for, who you're looking to pair up with. I think it's important to be able to show who you are too, and what you're looking for in somebody who you want to spend time with. You're going to spend time with this person or people. Um, there are so many places, of course, all these, um, yeah, like you said, startup forums, any kind of Slack group, any place you work, family or friends. I live in an apartment, and my next door neighbor, I had a temporary next door neighbor who lived there for 3 months. And one day she told me she was going out to have lunch with her son, who goes to USC. And I said, "Oh, cool. What's he studying?" And she said, "Computer science." I said, "Oh, cool." And she said, "What do you do, by the way?" I said, "Well, in fact, I've got a startup, and I'm building tech right now." And she just put it out there. She's like, "Hey, do you need any interns?" I said, "Well, I don't know if I can handle it. I don't want to do the paperwork. I can't afford it. I would have to be unpaid, and I don't know the legal stuff." And she told him, he reached out to me, and she said, "Can I give him your contact?" I said, "Of course." He reached out to me, and I said, "Hey, look," I shot him down. I was like, I don't have time for figuring out the bureaucracy of all this, and I don't want to get in any legal trouble. Um, he said, "Well, what if I do the research for you?" He's like, "I'll figure out how to get working with USC." And then I just pushed him all the way through. I ended up hiring this guy as an intern. And it was interesting, it was valuable and educational, and it didn't cost me the bureaucratic overhead. So there are so many ways and places. I mean, tell your mom, because maybe your mom knows someone or lives next to someone. So there are so many ways, to find people. And yeah, the wider you cast your net, the more likely you are to find someone. And again, if you're able to break yourself outside of that mold, and just be open to who knows, then you're in a space of who knows. So
I like that. I like a lot of that actually. For anyone that's listening, that's interested in the internship angle, I think that's brilliant because there's so many small businesses, early stage businesses that could benefit from an intern and that relationship, especially in inroads with your school, right? If you're at university, and yeah, making that happen, it's incredible. And like you said, often someone like yourself, they just don't have the resources and bandwidth to put that as a priority to sort out while at this stage. But the student going out of their way and sorting that out, not only do they address that for you, but they've also solved that same problem for other businesses that they might want an internship with, right? I think it's brilliant. It shows gumption. It shows an ability to not wait around and just take action and make a pathway for themselves. Brilliant.
yeah, it
Yeah.
showed he was hungry, and it showed he was able to actually get stuff done. He showed me attention to detail. Um, yeah, he showed me so many things that I didn't need to interview him, right? I mean, everything else was, again, the tech stuff. I didn't care what he knew tech wise. We could learn it. Like I have zero expectations for an intern coming in with technical knowledge. I just need to know that you're not going to slow me down.
It's
So
brilliant. That too. Like I like hearing you're doing a great job as a leader in the community, demonstrating what you should be doing as far as um, uh, entertaining and taking on interns. It's that self awareness and for not just the law but the responsibility and the expectations. As an intern, you're not, yeah, it's not them coming in and doing all this work as like, a junior hire. It's about, establishing that relationship and giving them ropes and insight into what it's like to actually be in a real, environment working, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
The other thing too that's great is, casting that wide net, and you touch on a couple different areas that are important in terms of like being a human being that's more than just work or your business, right? And being open to that, putting yourself in these situations. That's what's great about having hobbies and different pursuits and passions, music, art, you know, playing sports. All these are great opportunities to vibe with people and get a feel. I've met so many people on I play with one hockey team, and then I get invited to sub when another hockey team's goalie can't make it. And on both those hockey teams, I've made relationships with amazing people who act as mentors in this community, who are helpful, who have helped with their business in different ways. And it's amazing. And they're coming from all different fields, different backgrounds. Some, business owners, some very successful exited founders, some are investors, some are just amazing career professionals in different fields that are just like so cool. Right? I got one friend who edits all these crazy like movie trailers, and that's his job. Just gets to make cool movie trailers. Like, okay. And then another friend's like, an agent for different like celebrities and stuff. And it's like I wouldn't just like typically running these people out trying to meet them, just because I engage in a fun thing that I love. I love playing ice hockey. So yeah, I think it's great when you're saying cast a wide net and be open to different people and different relationships. You never know what role they'll fill or who they know. Like again, this intern's mom, which is like, hey, go talk to your neighbor or my neighbor, right? That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that could just as easily have been a co-founder, right? So, um,
Sassy adds a little bit more context. So Sassy's background's in sales and product management. I built the MVP with vibe coding and presented at AI meetups. I am now looking for a tech expert to lead the product development. The financial services experience is to have a better understanding of compliance, data security, and building within the finance regulations. I also wanted to have a wealth manager to fill in the input of FS, I guess financial services too. Yeah, so I don't know if that helpful. Hopefully, it's Sassy to give you some ideas. Another thing that was lacking as a possible, great opportunity to meet people is hackathons and startup weekends or other, short-lived incubators. Like Startup Weekend is a weekend incubator where you just come together, pitch ideas to the group, and then you pick your favorite ideas and get to work for the weekend and try to spin something up. It's very good at building relationships, not only with other participants on your team, but other people on other teams, and also the mentors and the judges and whoever else is participating as a sponsor or speaker, whatever. It's just an opportunity to get to know people and demonstrate what you bring to the table and how you work with people and vibe and go from there. So yeah, this is all hopefully helpful to you, Sassy, and others, but feel free to ask follow-up questions if we didn't touch on something or if you want to go deeper into something too. Um, William, Boyne, you're hanging out in here. Feel free to raise your hand, jump on stage, ask questions. Feel free to share what you got going on. Yeah, I know, Billy, you touched on the struggle with office dynamics and power and people being idiots in charge who likely just failed upwards in a lot of cases, especially at the biggest kind of positions. I know William kind of has some similar kind of experiences in different realms with that. I'd love to hear if you have any more tips or feedback in regards to managing that and how you kind of still found success to overcome that and be someone with an amazing resume that you have.
so I wanna be careful. I feel like you may have put some words in my mouth. I'm pretty sure I never called anyone an idiot.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
I'm
me.
not
That's me.
sure.
That's me. That's totally me. Don't. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay.
I'm just
I'm not
saying,
sure.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I've seen people be idiots in positions that you're like, how? But totally, that's me.
So yeah, in my experience, I'm not sure I would categorize maybe even anyone that I've seen in a position of power directly. Now, this is not to talk about news or politics, but people that I've worked directly with, who I would classify as an idiot. I think they may not have had the experience that I thought was probably essential for the role that they have, and perhaps their ego outweighed their decision making capability. Dunn Kruger have given us quite a bit of info on how and why that happens. Um, yeah, but before I do though, I just want to jump back and tangent to Sassy's thing and say something that's probably obvious, and so I apologize if I'm giving stuff that is obvious, but I felt like it's worth pointing out that if you are looking for someone to work, especially technically on compliance stuff, um, that there is a night and day difference between compliance and security. And I think it's really important that if you are looking for someone to work on compliance stuff, that you are not actually working or looking for a security person. Security is, yeah, and I don't want to say this in any derogatory term, and I don't even mean it that way. But it is so different. I feel like security is typically more of a creative type position, and compliance is regulation. It is literally understanding the rules, and in that case, you do have a box, and you need to fill that square peg or that square hole with a square peg. Compliance people, in my experience, are a different breed. They are people who love the the detail, of knowing they've put a dot on every I and that they have a consistent font. I mean, like, this is, and security people, in my experience, love to get very creative with, okay, how can we really, what's really going on here? So, and I know that compliance is often intended to serve a purpose of security, but I think realistically, compliance is meant to serve as a something more towards the litigiousness of our society, and it has more to do with legality and lawsuits than it does with actual security. So I think that that's essential when you're looking for someone, um, to to hire someone who is excited about the compliance aspect, and not someone who is excited about security, because they will end up in frustration. So
No, this is this is why I love these office hours, because we get these insights that might not seem as clearly obvious as they are. And no, you're right. Like compliance person is very much like, yeah, a rules lawyer, right? And making sure that everything's by the book. And like you're saying, like a security person, like, yeah, those personalities are very much more about how can I break this thing, and then like rebuild it to make it unbreakable or less breakable, right? And being real creative with those types of things. But yeah, there could be very clear disconnects between, yeah, the security side and the compliance side, and you're the security person looking for loopholes and things to like work around without meeting the compliance appropriately. And yeah, now you're getting fined for hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not a lot more, in a financial,
right.
product. So yeah, really good, really good. And you know what's other great thing that I love about you, man, or excuse me, yeah, is that
Whatever you're
yeah,
calling.
is that it's yeah, sorry, just
Okay.
muscle memory. But yes, the attention to your language and the compassion with it. And that's something like I gotta work on. Like, yeah, just being like, they're an idiot. They're just an idiot. Like, what are they doing? But yeah, I mean, it's really good for you to point out this awareness that, well, why is this person making these mistakes? Why are they not as competent as I expected? But it opens the door for opportunity to be a resource and, build a relationship with someone and try to overcome that if that's possible. Again, ego might be in the way, but if not, it's still really great to frame it in that way because I feel that it helps an individual better assess skills and experiences that they could hone in on and develop if their goal is to continuously grow that corporate ladder or be in a position where now they are a leader, right? Whether that's a startup founder or they're coming on board, right, as a hire who's leading a team or something like that. I, it's very good. I'm much more of a reactionary kind of like person when it comes to like encountering those types of situations. But I think, you demonstrating this deeper kind of like, patience and compassion towards other people, even if like on the surface, right, they seem like an idiot. But yeah, I think that's really important. So I appreciate that. And I think that's great mentorship for the community to approach it that way. So thank you. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're welcome. I mean, I mean, yeah, if I were to try to summarize Dunning Kruger, it's that it requires the same amount. You have to know enough about what you don't understand to know that you don't understand it. And we, and so we can't get there. I think some combination of that with the fact that larger organizations can handle situations where we've got people in decision making positions or positions of power who are unable to effectively do their job. It's less likely to sink the ship, right? Or to sink it anytime soon. And so, yeah, that has been maybe the biggest turnoff for me about larger corporations is you I believe see more of that because it can handle more of that. And it's probably harder to identify. I mean, like, who's going through and checking, and who could go through and check, hey, are all these people in positions of leadership able to really do their job well? And how do you know yeah, there's just so much. Whereas at startups and smaller organizations, you find out quick because things fall down, things break, and again, there's your answer. Okay, well, I got let's try again. That didn't work, so um, yeah. In general, I'm not a fan of like putting. I don't want people to put labels on me, and I try to avoid labeling others, especially with big dark negative. That person's an idiot. Like, I mean, I guarantee I have been given that label by many people, not just my kids. So, um, although I think they usually keep it in their heads, but I can see it on their face. You know, they're teenagers.
yeah, it's even yeah, that's kind of like a given at that point. I remember being a teenager myself. It was again reactionary type person. It's hard not to, but it's good raising good kids that they're just like it's on their face.
By the way, I feel it. There are many times when I have thought, oh, okay, I have thought that, and then I try to at some point as quick as I can straighten that out. Like, hey, is that person really an idiot? What's going on here? Yeah, I'm not the Buddha yet, so still working on it.
I'm just again very appreciative being exposed to someone who's closer. It's good inspiration. So thank you. Okay, so let me check this out. So it's coming up on time. So there's been a couple people have cycled in. Newcomers. Sassy says, hang on, where'd it go? I got too many windows open. Yeah, so Sassy says thank you both for sharing your insights. So that was helpful to them. Very happy about that. For new people that just joined in, last call for questions. Please use the text chat to post. Again, if you're just working on something, you don't have like a clear question, you can share what you got going on, and we'll do our best to just share some insights or push some questions your way to hopefully help you think and prepare a little better. Yeah. What else? I'm trying to look at text chats. Oh, here's something that kind of interesting. I was talking about in a community earlier too. When it comes to like you're a founder, right? You're first starting out, and this is kind of like where Sassy is, and where you might be too with like your current startup. When you're trying to assess the financials and the budgeting or requirements of how much you feel like you might need to raise or get a loan for, um, what's your process for doing that? Especially when it comes to the technology side of things, like how do you get a feeling of being like, okay, for us to spin up an MVP, it's probably gonna be $5,000 versus $50,000 versus $100,000. What's your process behind that?
I in the past, I would say it was very organic, and just comes from a lot of experience. Now we have LLMs. I would say talk to each one of them. Pull up Claude, pull up ChatGPT, pull up Gemini. If you're okay giving Elon some money, pull up Grok. Um, you know, ask each one of them to help you with that, and then and synthesize them and think through what they're telling you, to help try to reduce hallucination. Um, there's some great platforms to get started these days. Supabase, Firebase, and each one comes with an its own level of difficulty and complexity, but we no longer need to go straight to AWS or even Google Cloud Platform, or Azure if that's your flavor. Like we now have things that allow us to get there quicker. They're probably not going to scale in the same way or maybe as easily or maybe as much. However, for an MVP or maybe for the first year or two of your business, they're probably going to be enough. Um, things are a lot cheaper these days too. And yeah, my advice is any sort of complexity that you don't have to build, don't. So go with one of these platforms, and that also makes it easy to sort of to guess. It, I'm using Firebase for our thing, and Firebase has a great feature when I upload a function. I currently have 230 functions, and I went to go deploy, and I said, let's do make sure at least one instance of these functions is running, or at least. And so Firebase immediately gave me the feedback saying, hey, this is going to come out to at least $1,800 a month to run one instance. Do you really want to deploy this? And so it can give you that right there. Now, obviously, that's just one instance. In doing that, I realized, okay, I think it's time for me to potentially consolidate some of these functions, and work on now optimizing the cost for that. Because I could probably, without too much of an effort, within a week or so, reduce that to like one quarter of that price, without a significant refactor. And so by literally just bundling together a bunch of functions. So, yeah, but all the LLMs would have given me a ballpark of about that. Give or take a 500 or 600, I imagine. But it's hard to know. Um, there's that is definitely as equal parts art and science. And I think your best bet really is just use an LLM to start.
Awesome, very helpful, and I like to like the caution to critically, practice critical thinking as you're assessing these things, and don't just take it at its word. And also like I have heard other people really recommend using multiple different ones and then comparing and contrasting. But I think it's very again wise and helpful because too many people they just turn to these tools and they think that they're flawless and they can just be trusted immediately, which is very dangerous. But this is really good. Um, Okay, so I want to ask one more question before follow up or kind of start to close down. Ask you to share some announcements that you may have and what's going on. But I'm curious with the leadership side. A lot of this has really been revolving around culture and establishing that and being part of culture. Whether again, you're working for a company or leading a company. I'm curious. from your experience, next, background, different companies, how are you applying those lessons you've learned to establish and manage your own company culture with your new startup?
Yeah, culture is a big word. And I'm not sure I even know where to start with that. I I'd like to reframe it and just say, uh, for starters, especially when it's so small, bring back to what I said before. Who do you want to be with? Who do you want to spend your time around? Like these are people you're going to be spending a lot of time with. Do you enjoy each other? I joined a startup as a CTO during COVID, and without tipping my cards too much here, I'm fairly progressive and liberal and left leaning. Our CEO was very conservative, and friends. He was two pieces away from, or two steps away from, our current president, and so um, I told myself when I took the position, hey, you know what? We can separate this. Like, I can be an adult. Like, this can just be work. As long as we sort of avoid talking about politics, we can move forward. Um, I'd say that was yes and no. Because at the end of the day, we had different ideas on what we thought was morally acceptable. In the end, I left because he told me to fire the entire staff so that we could replace them with a much cheaper whatever, and he would figure out a way to, in his words, dilute the shit out of them so that we could reclaim all of our stock. Um, that was just not in alignment with me, and so I it was a really hard decision, but it was also a really easy decision. I'd say it was an easy decision and a painful decision, because I had invested a lot of myself and my time and my emotion, and I really believed in the product, and our team was amazing. Team that he wanted to axe because we could save a lot of money by using an outsourced team. Um, so yeah, it's important who you're choosing to spend your time around with, and I don't think yeah, they have to align perfectly. I think you really do need to be pretty close though. Um, so
I think it's that a great example too, because when you first brought this up, right, you're talking about how it's like dating, right? And it's same same situation would play out if you're dating someone with the intention of being in a long-term relationship, maybe marriage, and it's like living in with that person every day. Those values that they have are going to be demonstrated through their behaviors and their actions at some point, and there's going to be conflict because of that. And yeah, it doesn't need to be a perfect alignment between people. It's just about make sure you're aligned on the most critical things, the make or break things, right? The things that you can't compromise on. Other things, it's like it's an opportunity to learn and grow. And this is again what I love about you as a mentor, as demonstrated through this office hour, is you on a few different occasions have taken a pause to think and reframe things and then approach it, right? And these different interactions with people from various different backgrounds and different values and cultures, as long as those no compromise issues are in alignment, everything else can be different, and it allows you to have an opportunity to question how you're framing things, how you're approaching things, how you're experiencing things, and then try to apply these new, ways that you're being exposed to through these people, right? So I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. Bit of advice and insight. Fantastic. And I don't want to take up too much of your time. We're already over. You're always fantastic. I really appreciate this. This is great. Um, do you have any announcements that you want people to know about? Any events coming up? I know it's Tech Week LA. Anything that you're going to that you think could be good for others that want to get involved as a founder or in the tech field, anything like that?
I don't think I have anything that I can add of value to Tech Week. I think that speaks for itself, or Google will speak better than me. As far as Commune, which is the startup I'm working on, I don't have any announcements just yet, but I'm so close, so close. I'm hoping to launch soon. Our next big hurdle is just getting Apple to approve the app so that I can have public beta testers. If you are interested in potentially helping me to beta test a new social
I
network.
can't reach the internet right now. Check your modem or router connection and
Stop.
try
Hey,
again.
Google, stop. Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course, my internet is completely down in my house, but I've got my cell phone. So, yeah, if would someone like to help, please reach out. You've got my contact, or Gary can share it. And I will happily get you on our list. The goal of the platform is to help us bring ourselves together and help to uplift us and our hearts. So
I am a big fan, and we need a lot more of that everywhere. So I appreciate the mission. And yeah, don't be shy. I just shared your LinkedIn across the different chats, and they're attached to
cool.
all the event pages. If everyone's interested, you can always find Billy's LinkedIn from the event pages. Um, yeah, Billy, if you're free on Friday, come hang out with us at the launch. There's a bunch of wonderful people I'd love to introduce you to, and potential beta testers there too. Um, Other than that, thank you again for being a part of this and helping me get this community going, and yeah, giving people an opportunity to connect with wonderful mentors like yourself, and hopefully find the inspiration and guidance to pursue whatever that ambition is, be a startup founder themselves or move into tech career. So thank you so much. You're amazing.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for including me.
Awesome. All right. With that, thank you everyone. Catch you next time. Farewell.